Assalamu alaikum friends, we are KMZee and today we present you with our first tutorial video and the topic is how the web works, which is also known as the client server architecture. So in this video we will basically try to understand in brief about how the web actually behaves. We won't go into too much technical details as this video is aimed for absolute beginners and general audience, the ones who just want to get the basics in and understand how the things work behind the scenes. So let's get started. Now the device which is used to browse the internet, the device which is used to request something from the internet is known as the client, and the device which is used to give something to the internet, basically it respond to a client's request, is known as a server. In simple words, we can say that client is the requester of the service or resource or whatever he is browsing the internet for, and the server is the responder of the request by a resource or a service or whatever the client is asking for. So the basic way the whole transaction carries on is the client sends a request to the internet, and the internet sends a request somehow to the server. We will explore that somehow in a bit. Then the server reads the request and responds with whatever it can do to resolve the request, and the response then reaches the client through the internet. So this is the whole 1,000 feet view of the whole client server architecture. Let us dive a bit deeper by breaking down and understanding the each steps involved in that transaction. So the first thing we need to know is a URL, that is Uniform Resource Locator. So this is a string which is used to locate a website on the internet. Every website has its unique URL which can be browsed if you want to browse that particular website. Let us break down and understand what this URL consists of. So the first thing, that is this HTTPS, is known as a network protocol. Network protocol is a set of rules and regulations that describes how the communication should take place between the client and the server, or whatever two nodes are communicating with each other on the network. These are of many types like HTTP, TCP, that is Transmission Control Protocol, or UDP, that is User Datagram Protocol. Those are out of this video scope. We will not go deep into that. We will just understand that there are two protocols through which we can browse web, that is HTTP and HTTPS. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That means that this is a protocol for transferring hypertext through a network, through the internet. Now, hypertext means that something that can be parsed and displayed on a web in a beautiful manner. If you understand this, if we take an example of this website, then if I inspect something, okay. So as you can see, this is a hypertext markup language that is used to design the structure of the contents which is displayed on this website. So HTTP, or Hypertext Transfer Protocol, is used to transfer this type of hypertext through a network. And the S in here means that the transmission is secured. That means whatever contents are being transmitted through the internet are encrypted, and no one will understand those contents except from client and the server, even if they gain access to that contents. And this www is not of that significance, as this just specifies that your website is available publicly, that is your website is available on world wide web. If we see this page of Google Docs that is not publicly available, it will only be available if I log in the Google Docs website using my ID. So this is the part of deep web. And if we take an example of this KMZee.online, this is available on world wide web. It is public, there is no authentication or anything required. So basically www means that your website is available on the internet, and the KMZee.online is known as the domain name of that website, which is the main locator of that website. We can also refer to that as the address of that website, the general address, which is easy to remember. And the slash verticals, which is color coded in green, is the particular resource you are requesting for after going to that website. So that particular server can have multiple resources after going to that particular domain name. So we specify those resources after a slash, like here, like in KMZee.online website, we have verticals, we have about, and we have different pages, we have different endpoints. So this slash verticals can also be called endpoint or a path. So after a particular URL is clicked and a resource is requested, the request reaches to the domain name, that is KMZee.online, and to the particular resource with the help of the whole query string. And in general, the process is same as we discussed here. But the domain name is not the actual address of the particular server or a client. Whatever devices are connected to the computer is assigned with a unique IP address. That is the actual address of that particular device on the internet. So we can look at the IP address as a sequence of some integers separated with dots. So these three things right here are the network address, and this is the host address, and this is assigned to every particular device that is connected on the internet. Same as we have addresses to identify buildings and houses on the earth, we have IP addresses to identify devices on the internet. So the domain name which we saw is an easy to remember name assigned to that particular device, but the actual address of that particular device on the internet is IP address, that is internet protocol address. And after understanding IP address, we can say that the domain names are assigned to IP address. The domain names are easy to understand names for a particular IP address, as no one can remember IP address as those are some random integers, but domain name can be easily remembered by the company name or whatever name the owner wants to assign to his website. Now you might be wondering that if we provide a domain name to the browser, if we provide domain name to the client, then how that is converted to that particular IP address. So this is done using DNS lookup. So DNS lookup is the process of converting any domain name to its assigned IP. So there is a thing called a domain name server, that is DNS server. It is a server that has all the assignings of domain names to IP addresses. It is not a single server. There are many DNS server across the world. Whoever wants to host their resources or website on the internet need to buy a domain name if he is aiming for public access to that particular website or resource. And there are many domain name providers that can provide you with domain names, and when we buy it, they assign our IP to that particular domain name which we bought, and whenever that domain name is accessed, the DNS server redirects that particular request to our IP, or whatever IP is assigned to that particular domain name. Now let us conclude whatever we have learned through overview of the whole process of how the web actually works. We have not gone into too much technical details, as this was the introductory video. We have seen this diagram already. We have understood the working of web, the general working of web using this diagram in the first slide. Now there is a slight modification after learning the concepts of IP address and DNS. So whenever the client sends a request, it first goes to a DNS server for a DNS lookup. So the URL is passed and the domain name is extracted, and the particular domain name is searched for its assigned IP so that the request can be redirected to the server. Then after finding the particular IP, then the request from the client is redirected to the particular server to which that domain name is assigned. After that, the request is resolved by the server and sent back through the internet to the client. Thank you so much for bearing with me for this long. And if you find this video helpful, please don't forget to like the video, share the video with your friends, and please subscribe to the channel.